lot of different jobs, and a lot of times when I hear from people who are trying to find out what community management is, they kind of say, they come to me and they say things like, I've done a lot of interesting things over my life, and I don't know what to do with all the stuff that I have now acquired along the way. Usually those people make the best community managers, not gonna lie, because you have all of these different places to pull all these different tools from. When Eli started talking about the fact that he doesn't know what a community manager is, sometimes I don't even actually know what a community manager is. I think the reason is because it keeps on changing, and everyone I talk to defines it in a different way. And so coming up with a definition is really tough. I went on Wikipedia, of course, and it says community manager is broken down into two different things on there. There's the digital community managers, and then there's community managers which help with civic things. I'm well, it's kind of a blend of both, at least in my opinion. In my opinion, a community manager is somebody or a team. I saw some Hootsuiters in your room. Hey. So I think community managers are people who just get people to come together and engage. That's it. And whether it happens online or offline, it's the people who are actually fusing these relationships. They're creating the networks, they're creating the relationships. They are the ones that are at the hub of any kind of community. I wish there were more words for it. If somebody wants to give me a thesaurus of it, that would be fantastic. So most of what I'm going to talk about tonight, I actually wrote up on the board there, because at the end of all this, what I'm hoping is that you guys will go over there and say, you know what, I wish that I had more information about this area, because I want to know how to do this better. And myself, in between these 6 different ones that we're doing over the months, we're actually going to put together some salons. So we're going to go to different coffee shops, and we're going to talk out your stuff. So small groups actually make communities happen. It's all those tiny little networks that happen friend to friend. So I want to make those happen over the next 6 months as well. And if we can get them done even faster, well, heck, that will be great too. So we'll do it all on places called Facebook and Twitter and the NetSquared, or Net Vancouver, sorry, name change, Net Vancouver's meetup group. So I guess I kind of started with my own story. My story, I guess I could start in 2009. So first of all, I just said what a community manager was. Was that the first time that anyone had heard a community manager described? No? A couple in the back? Okay, cool. So after all of these interesting kind of jobs that I had that kind of led me to Craigslist. 2009, I was a marketing consultant, helped small businesses figure out how to use Facebook and Twitter. Actually, did I help with Twitter? More like Facebook, and how to do loyalty campaigns and how to do offline events. That's where I was spending most of my time. And I was recruiting for a couple of positions, marketing coordinator kinds of roles. And I came across this position on Craigslist for Yelp. And Yelp hadn't really launched in Canada yet. Nobody really knew what it was. Actually, when I told people that I had applied for it, and then when I told people that I took the job, my friends and family were all like, you are nuts, don't do it. This is just a startup, they probably work in a basement, it's not gonna go anywhere. People were so skeptical, except for Jenna. Jenna was not skeptical, Jenna believed in this.
I was your reference.
She was. Thanks, Jenna. But what happened was I actually, in 2009, I didn't know what community management was either. I just looked at the job description, which I think is what everyone should do. So rule number 1, forget the titles. Just look at the descriptions. If you like the descriptions, go apply for the job. Because I looked at the description and thought to myself, man, I do all of that. I do every single thing that it lists. Be the mayor of your city, you love talking to people, you have opinions about restaurants and businesses, you can wrangle people, you want to host events, and you want to write a crap ton of content. Sure, I could do all of that stuff, and that was a community manager for Yelp. It's a little bit deeper than that, but that's where it kind of started. And so over the next 4 years, I basically helped build a team of community managers across Canada and the US, and weighed in on a lot of how the community management program, as it ended up being at Yelp, was going to be executed. And just a little note, at Yelp, is everyone here familiar with Yelp? Is there anyone who's not? Yelp's a website that lets you write reviews about local businesses, so anything from restaurants to mechanics and everything in between. It started in San Francisco in 2005, I think, and there's some ridiculous amount of reviews and 100 million people looking at it every month. Sorry, I used to be able to say that better, but I haven't worked there for about a year. So when we started looking at like what we actually needed to do to grow, we realized we didn't need a marketing strategy, we needed a community management strategy. So there were no like AdWords on Yelp, nobody was doing that, nobody was doing like SEO on it, nobody was like trying to sell people on the idea of writing content. We were just going out there and getting people excited about sharing what they already wanted to share. Is this thing kind of cutting in and out, or is it just me?
It is.
Okay, okay, sorry. Well, actually, before I go any deeper, I had 2 other slides I wanted to share. One, the biggest thing that I like doing right now, and the reason that I'm up here doing this today, is because I really like helping people get jobs, and I love helping people get jobs in marketing. I don't get paid to do this, I just love doing it. So if you are someone who loves marketing, maybe loves this community management stuff, and you want to send me your CV, I will keep it on file, and when I hear about jobs, and I might reach out to you and say, hey, what about this one every once in a while, or get a little more clarification about what you're looking for, I actually keep all this stuff on file, and people ask me all the time, like they're looking for unicorns, and I like saying that I can help find unicorns. So feel free to email me your CV. That's my shameless plug, it's not that bad. Okay, watch out, you're gonna see your faces here. I wanted to get to know who is in my crowd before I start talking about more in-depth stuff. So I know some of you see yourselves. I took them all from Meetup, hope you don't mind. I just want to get a sense. Who owns a business? Who owns a business that's online? Whose business is primarily online? Okay. Who's a community manager? Whoa. This is awesome, you guys. That's like the biggest round of hands that I've seen before in community management. So yay to you guys. Cool. Okay. So into tips. My biggest tip, and this might not be that exciting. So this whole thing's about tips, and they're all listed out there. This might not be that exciting, but as Tara and I were talking about just a few minutes ago, this is actually pretty important. Time management. Who wants to hear a little bit more about what I think about time management? Yeah? Todd's like, yes, I do. How does she do all the things that she gets done? I don't know. So this is actually a slide, and I don't have the slide anymore, so I had to steal it from Google search when I looked up Northern Voice, because I used the slide when I was at Yelp, as you can see that little bird stuff there. This was my schedule when I was back at Yelp. So it's very important to be somebody who's efficient with your time. So I have a few strategies for that, and I'm actually going to read them out because that will make me more efficient on telling you. And this is the first time I'm testing this material. So hello, guinea pigs. So number 1, lose the weight. We subconsciously think about stuff. Like right now, I'm thinking about the fact that I have text messages that I haven't answered and that I didn't check my email like all day long. There's like 230 emails that need to get addressed. I'm thinking about that stuff, and it's causing me like kind of like a little bit of an ulcer going on here. But I know it's more important to be here, so I'm trying to put that aside. So my thought and my philosophy around losing all the weight is get that stuff listed somewhere else. Put it on a list, whatever you want. I care less what you guys use, if it's a carrier pigeon or whatever. Just get it out of your brain and onto somewhere else so that it's not occupying your mind share. I found that this has been... Sorry. I think it's the batteries, yeah. Good point. Not so mechanical over here. So I find that when you get like so frazzled, as is, I'm not going to lie, today's been a pretty frazzling day. But when you get really frazzled, it's really hard to concentrate on the projects that are most important to move those needles. Sorry for the marketing lingo. So make some time to like clear those schedules off and clear the things you need to get done, okay? I think that's just like my PSA. Make some time to plan. Who does, like, unless you're forced by a manager, right? But like, who does this? Who thinks about what they need to get done today, this week, this month, and this quarter? And maybe in the backwards kind of way. Oh, a few people in the back, good stuff. I like you people in the back. I think this stuff's really important. Go from the back to the front, right? Do your quarters. And even if you don't have somebody who's like actually holding you accountable to this stuff, figure out what you want to accomplish, especially community managers. You have so many different projects that you're working on at any one given time. Figure out what like the 3 to 7 projects are that you really want to get done this quarter and work it backwards. These are your timelines, people. This is what will make you feel like you've actually accomplished something. Thank you. This is like getting everything off my chest. Wear one hat well. What I mean by that is when we go around pretending that we can multitask, and now there's been enough scientific studies to prove that we can't actually effectively multitask. When you switch from one project to another, you actually have so much mind drain that you have a hard time jumping into those other projects. So like turn off the phone, get one thing done, put away your Facebook and your Twitter and everything else you're supposed to be doing, because that's what community managers do, or that's what they use. Put that stuff away to get the actual stuff that you need to get done. Work at one project at a time. Some of these things up here were actually mean like blocking time off for things like, well, like the gym. That's a big deal for me. Blocking things off for things like creative thinking. So creative thinking for me was like a walk around the block. So I would actually block it off and then have like multiple alarms going off saying you haven't done this yet, you need to do this now. Other things I block off time for. Industry news. When do we get time to actually consume all the stuff that we want to be able to talk about throughout the week? We need to have time for this stuff. So I just laid it all in. It's kind of a hard thing because time management is also a little bit habitual, so it takes a while to actually get growing on this stuff and to realize that the more that you schedule yourself, you actually end up getting a lot more freedom. So anyway, I could talk on and on about this forever and ever, so please put like a little line there if you want me to do that, and I'll talk about it in a smaller group kind of setting. Any questions about time management or things that you think I should have just covered? Yeah? Specific tools that I use for time management, yeah. Okay, first, my time management Bible was Getting Things Done. I think I've memorized that whole book by David Allen, so I suggest that. My habit is the 2-second rule. So I use 2-second rule for email all the time. Anytime I'm waiting for a bus or I'm waiting for a phone call to start, anytime where I can't actually put time together for a larger project, I make sure that I do the little tiny ones. Google Calendars I'm still really big into, and Google Tasks I use a lot. Evernote I use for my bigger tasks, and actually I've gone back to analog. I use a pen and paper. I find that it helps me realize exactly, there you go. I find that it helps me slow down and think about what my actual priorities are for the day. And there's something still really cathartic about crossing something off of a list. I also make my paper really small, so I can only fit so many things on a piece of paper. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I use. I think that's about it. Yeah, there's probably more, and again, if you want to email me, I'll write down all the things that I've used. Okay. My next big tip, network building. So I know we're all here tonight, and so we must all be slightly social people. I have been told by a lot of different people that there's no need to build their networks one by one once they've achieved scale. And I think that's bull. Big time bull, because. So I'm going to go through the three places that I see. I see where you're growing a community, or basically, or building where you have nothing, where you're growing and it's accelerating. Should I just put this away?
Yeah.
No? Can you guys hear me if I do this? In the back? Okay, I'll just do that. So when we are in like pure building mode, it's so important to find like those first people, like those first super early adopters who are probably your best friends. I think Jenna might have been one of the first people that wrote a review on Yelp for me.
I was.
Not for me,
but
yes, she did. Because you need someone to say that you're not alone in this, right? If it was just me, I'd be talking to crickets. I need people. So you keep building your relationships one by one, and then you start networking your relationships. So it's one thing to be a community manager who has like a ton of different relationships coming out from them. It's another to say you are a connector and you connected people in your community to one another. So the second phase is you've got all of these people who all like love what you're doing and are supporting you, and you've supported them, and we'll get to acknowledgement and cheering people on in a little bit. But it's another thing to say, okay, now you meet you, and you guys go off and have a meeting on your own. Get to know each other, right? This is what actually forms big nodules everywhere for your community to actually grow. Then you get into growth. So all these great people that you have kind of, trained, I guess, in the way that you want it, trained in your way for your community. All of these people are now kind of like speaking about the community that you're trying to create in the way that you wanted it in your vision. So if you want somebody to, so on Yelp, we really wanted people to write about happy things. So not saying that they shouldn't write about negative things, but we wanted to see people share opinions about things that they loved. Because the more people share about the things that they love, the happier that they get, and the more they spread that happiness, right? As opposed to sharing about things that they hate, getting turned off from it, and like walking away. How many people in this room have enough time to like just read all the hate that's on the internet? Nobody. But you want to know still where you want to go for coffee. Wouldn't you rather read about things that are happy? So we would kind of instill this
happiness vibe, right? Like, you can write about anything, that's fine. Everybody has a nasty experience here or there. But if all you're writing about is nasty stuff, I would actually be the community manager who would say things like, come on, didn't anything good happen to you this week? Share that too. So we're leading by example. And then as those people go on to talk about the story that you're trying to share, they tell that story. So you're creating role models. Does anyone here like super users in the role models? You want people who are doing things that you want them to be doing for your community. And then when you get into scale, you still need to have one-on-one relationships because, you know, bad things will happen, right? You'll get like an awful thing in the press, right? And you need people who will come and stand by your side and say, actually, no, that's not exactly. The press got it wrong. It's actually like this in our community. You need those people. And if you didn't create all these one-on-one relationships to begin with, you won't have anything to stand on, and your whole community will crumble underneath you. So if I could say one thing that community managers or all of us just trying to build, build our sites from scratch could do, if you had to put everything down for one day or for one moment, you're super busy, I would say meet one person today. Have one strong relationship today. Start something today, because you'll never know where that will lead. I shall share a story now. So, and I share it because there's a couple people in the room who might actually know this guy. So, and it happened, I didn't know Jenna was actually going to be here until she showed up at the door. I'm like, oh, hi, I didn't, I'm sorry. Jenna runs Make It, which is a cool like craft show. And one of the first things that I had done at Yelp was I wanted to have a booth there because I thought the people who go to Make It are really cool and crafty and I like crafts. So we had a booth there. One of the first people that I met there was a guy named Boris Mann. Who knows Boris in this room? Yeah. Boris one of the leaders for Pixel Crafters. He's one of the organizers for it. And Boris and I just had a really great conversation about Yelp and about like craft, and that was about it. And over the years, the amounts of times where we have like run into each other have been like I can't even count them now. And now we're actually friends, and he's led me to a lot of other interesting things in the tech kind of realm. But it all sort of just started with the fact that I stopped and took the time just to have a conversation with the guy, right? And now I remember that only because of what's happened now. But I have so many other memories of starting these one little one-on-one conversations. And I think we need to get back to the root of how relationships start, and it's by us like just making the time to have these conversations. Okay. Whew. Next. This was Pi Day. Does anyone know Pi Day 314? Who loves pie? Okay, so I'm in the middle. The guy with his eyes closed is John. He's a community manager at Yelp for San Francisco, and the guy on the other side of me is Jeffrey, and he's the Salt Lake City community manager. This is in Salt Lake City. Jeffrey says, Crystal, I was his boss. He says, Crystal, I really want to do something for Pi Day. I'm like, what do you want to do? He's like, I'm going to throw a pie party. I'm like, okay, go forth and throw a party. We will get to offline events in a little bit here. So Jeffrey throws this awesome party, and we have pies left over at the end of it. Like, I don't know what happened. We just had these shells. I'm like, you know what? We should do something that shows our community. You know, there's like 500 people here. We should do something that shows like kind of our humanity and that we can get silly too. We've been working the registration thing the whole night. You know, we've been in charge of like mixing with the PR people and like getting everything ready and making sure all the vendors are happy and doing the hosty thing, right? We need to do something. So we let people enter a draw to pie us. And this was all me that started this. I grabbed garbage bags. This was not planned. I grabbed garbage bags. I put Yelp stickers on them. I made us wear them. We're in the back of Jeffrey's truck just outside like the event, and we said just line up and pie us. And people loved it. They loved it because, and my community management team loved it too, even though they're like, you serious? Don't get pied in the face. It's really sticky. It's hard to clean off. There's a lot of reasons not to do this. I'm so happy that we did do it. Because people like felt like we were so connected in that moment, right? Like they got to like do something silly. I mean, charities do this all the time too, right? And like you can see this like with big sporting people and like civic leaders and stuff. They want to like engage in silly and fun ways that make them feel and seem more human because they are, and they want to have these experiences too. So my philosophy for how to kind of scale and talk to everyone is by acknowledging every single person. That might sound like a lot to do, and it is a lot to do. I'm not saying that community managers have it easy. Sometimes it's really hard to get to every single person. Sometimes you need those awesome core contributors, those awesome super users, to act on your behalf because you can't do it all yourself. But acknowledging every single person is really important. On Yelp, we used to say, you always say hello to everybody, right? Whether they wrote a happy review, a sad review, no review at all, whether they hadn't put up their own picture yet, whether they had added their picture and totally rounded out their profile, you just always say hello. Then the other piece, the bigger piece of it, is how to celebrate your role models. So, you might acknowledge every single person, but you cheer on your champions. So those are the people that are going to be there when you're down in the dumps. Those are the people that are going to be like the foundation that's going to hold and glue your whole community together, and they're going to be the ones who do things like host an event for you because you're sick. That happened to me once. That sucked. Who's going to moderate your talk threads? We call them talk threads on Yelp. Moderate your talk threads because you're away for the weekend and you don't want to do it so you can go camping. Totally had people that helped me out with that stuff too. They're the ones who will come to your side at a party and say, hey, you look really busy. Is there anything I can do? And I said things like, yeah, just let me tie this balloon around your hand. You're going to be the welcome wagon right now because I got to go take care of something. And they'd stand there and be the welcome wagon. These are people who actually really care and want to help. And if you celebrate them, they want to do it more. Community managers, do you do this? I see some smiles and some nods and stuff, so I believe that it works. It's a lot of hard work, but it works. It just takes a while. I also have a theory about growing things organically as opposed to putting pesticides and things on them. So if anyone's thinking about automating this whole thing, getting a bot or something to do all your DMing for you, probably don't want to hear the rest of this because I don't believe in that. Okay, any questions so far? Community managers, you want to chime in on anything? Quietly listening. Okay, cool. Offline. How many people here do anything that is like an offline meetup outside of coming to the ones? How many people here organize them or create parties? Yeah. Okay. So I've had this conversation a lot. The whole idea that community management just happens online. A lot of people will say, oh yeah, you work online, you work with social media, you work with digital tools. That's all it is. There's always a screen in front of you. 93% of life still happens offline. I reverse engineered this stat that says 7% of word of mouth happens on social media. So only 7% happens on social media, word of mouth, talking. Where's the rest happen? Talking to your friends, going to a dinner party, at a bus stop. I once met who would become a community manager at a bus stop. So it just happened to open up a conversation. I think not adding offline events or offline engagement opportunities to any kind of community management strategy is time really wasted. Look at all of you and me. We're all in the room because we wanted to actually have some, right? We need to facilitate these types of relationships for our communities. So I could, again, go on and on about how to host an event, what you need to worry about, especially when you're in Vancouver and everyone's last minute here. We could talk a lot about how events that do work, events that don't work, and how to actually start bridging people at these kinds of events. And I would love to do all that, but I know we don't have that much today. So is there any specific questions about events that you guys are dying to ask me that I can answer right now? Right, crowd. Okay, backing away. Okay. So cute, right? I love unicorns. I believe community managers are unicorns. You could tweet that, marketing girl. So be a great storyteller. Sometimes I think some of the best things that have happened have been when I just say some analogy about something. I feel like you hit the nail on the head when you just relate to somebody, and it's all by telling a story about how you are as a person. So, and listening to their story. So, some of the things that I actually do, and I don't know if I realize I'm doing them until I stand up here with a slide behind me, is I tell stories that make me feel more human because I want to be informal. And I know I'm standing in front of you, and so that makes me in some position of power, but I don't actually think I'm in a position of power with you. I just think I'm your peer. I just happen to be up here because I've done this for a bit. And I think like telling the stories like about the pie helps me like tell you that I'm just as human as the rest of you. I also have face palms coming up, which will be great about telling about the mistakes that I've made and continue to make frequently. It's great. So I think, cool. Sorry, like what's going on over there? Yeah, we should tell our stories at a post-event drink. So tell stories with passion. I believe that every time that you hit your tools, every time you hit the Hootsuite, every time you're on Facebook, whatever you're using as your platform, every time it's a chance to add another brushstroke to the story that you're forming about your brand, about your community, and what you want people who are outside your community who you want to bring in, or people who are already inside, what you want them to actually know about you. Every chance is an opportunity for that. And I think we need to take them in little tiny doses and big doses. I really like strategies that include researched and well-defined content calendars for all your content marketers out there. I also really love ones that like every time somebody's just thinking about how to respond, they're thinking, what would my brand say? If I'm like, as a community manager, I am my brand. So what I'm right now the community manager for CHIMP, which is the Charitable Impact Foundation. What would Charitable Impact Foundation say when I'm saying this? A great story to tell about CHIMP is that, this last week, we're helping somebody who has a giving group, which is a way to like collectively raise money online. They got themselves in a little bit of hot water with some logistical stuff. Turns out it's really hard to move a lot of shoes to Haiti. Or the Dominican, sorry, it's the Dominican. And they needed our help. It's really not the place where we can soar. We don't know how to help them with that, but we can get them into places that can help them. So they needed charity in the Dominican to find these shoes. I know it's very convoluted, not a great story, but we want to help them we go further and further beyond. So all of our tweets, all of our messaging around them is like celebrating what they have been doing and what they are doing. And then even in our email strategy, I'm not even talking about email marketing strategy, I'm talking about emails. Our emails tell a story. So every email that I seemed to write in the last week was how can we help this one group? They're just individual people trying to do a good thing in the world. How can we help this one little group? So every email I write, every time I've tried to get them get their money into something else so it can get moved to the right places, I'm sharing CHIMP's story in some way, shape, or form. I think we need to look at that from the very ground up. So it's not just a strategy, it's what we do every day at the grassroots level. Questions about stories or who's a better storyteller than me, because I think there's some people in this crowd that are better. And, plug, Eli's got a storytelling one coming up on October 9th, right? Done. Okay. Okay, I think this is my favorite one, my tip that I think it's like a mantra to me. Let it go. So every time I think I have to do it all myself, I just remember all the times where I ask people to help me. Like even this, Eli, help me out here. Help me out here, see? Every time, Eli came to me and said, hey, let's do this community manager thing. Do you want to do it? And the first thing I thought was, oh my goodness, I have to do 6 of these? I have to come up with 6 different things? And he's like, oh gosh, no. We'll just get other people to help with it. We'll find people. And all of a sudden we just opened it up and people were like, oh, I can talk about that. I know how to do this. When you let your community, whether that's your friends or an actual brand that you're trying to build, when you let your community steer for a while, such a better job than you ever will. No offense, community managers, you rock. But when you get them, when you delegate tasks that help them feel like they're a part of your community, and when you get to step back and see other people doing all the great things that you want them to do, it's such a blessing on both sides. So I try as much as I can to delegate a lot of tasks to people who care about doing those tasks. I try to look for people in my community who want to do things. At Yelp, I'd see somebody who was always trying to organize, they're called unofficial Yelp events. And they were always trying to get some people involved, and maybe they weren't getting as much traction as they would have liked. And I would say things like, hey, you look like you really like hosting events. And I'm supposed to be hosting events every week. And it's becoming really hard to host that many events and get this many people together. Do you mind hosting them for these 2 weeks? And I'll promote your event, and I'll do the other 2 events, and you can come to my event and just hang out and I'll buy you a beer. People love helping. Who hosts dinner parties? A few of us. Who goes to dinner parties? Okay, more of us. Who always offers to help? Bring the wine, bring a dessert, clean up some dishes.
Yay, we love those people.
Yeah. There are people in the crowd, not everybody, but these people They're your stars. Find out who likes to actually do those things. Some guy in the back, that guy right there, you raised your hand and you're still smiling. I like you. Get him to be part of your community. Get him to help with things. Sorry, guy in the back. I think what I'm trying to say is when you give people the chance to shine, they shine better than you ever could imagine that they could. So look for opportunities. Get to know people in that whole networking building to find out what kinds of things that they like to do, and then get them to do the things they love doing. And you won't have to do as much yourself. Questions about how to let it go? Do I need to share mantras or meditation tips or anything?
People get freaked out about letting go because now you have other people being the spokesperson for your brand, and that freaks out my boss. How do you message that letting go within your organization?
That's a good question. I guess it depends on your organization. If you have a boss that freaks out about that feeling of it, I think you might have to prove your concept a little bit. So, if it was me, this might not be the best advice, but if it were me, I would probably do my own little test project about letting something go. Actually, I'm doing this right now at Chimp. I'll share this story because I'm doing this and my boss doesn't really. So don't tell him. So I realized that we needed a stronger PR strategy, and I don't have the time or the bandwidth to do the PR strategy that I want. So I found a volunteer who is a PR professional, who is doing all of the pitches and things to the media. Still, again, don't do this because my boss doesn't know I'm doing this. But it's all running back through me. So it's not like I'm doing it without any kind of, without giving her any kind of help or assistance. So she crafts the pitch. I just proof it, and I proof it really well because I know that this is important. And then she sends it, acting as me. So, okay, I lied a little bit because it wasn't proven until she did a great job, and then I was like, yeah, this RPR volunteer did that. And then they're all excited about it because I let her do her great thing in the world that she brings to the table for an awesome organization. It worked out really well. So maybe not so much in PR strategies. It's kind of big, but I'm willing to take big risks on this kind of stuff because I know it works. But maybe for you, maybe it's a little more of a smaller risk. And sometimes I think even if it's not, we might be the one who's the boss, right? We might be the CEO or something, right? And it's our baby that we're talking about here, and we have to let go of something, and we have to delegate something. Start small. Take one task that you really hate. It's so easy to let go of a task. It's easier, I should say, to let go of a task that you hate doing and give it to somebody who would love to. Yeah.
You mentioned that there are points that you ask yourself what plans and you're letting go to somebody else. How would you do that? This brand has that.
I would say this goes all the way back to that second slide I showed about networking and more about friend building. So I think you need to be able to trust the people that you're delegating to. And when you're delegating a task to a community member, whether they work for you or a volunteer or they don't work for you at all, they're just a contributor in some way, you need to be able to trust them. So I think it's something that needs to be built a little bit over time. You can actually kind of see how people will be with your brand, especially if they're part of your community, because they probably are talking about you in a certain way, which is probably how you met them in the first place. So the girl that's doing the PR stuff, she's actually done, she's been on the interviewing side of something that I did for a blog that we were doing a while ago. So I got to see how she talked about Chimp from the interviewee side, which made it a lot easier to think she'd be really great at talking about the brand. Or I was at the Art of the other day. I guess I was last week. Is anybody else there? The Art of Marketing. Were you there for what's his name? Scooter Braun. Yeah. So Scooter Braun is Justin. Does that say Justin Bieber? It's Justin Bieber's manager, and he said that he found. So somebody asked a question about who tweets for Bieber. And he said, well, Bieber tweets for Bieber, but he has social media coordinators. How did you find them? His fans. One of his fans who already had a big fan page set up, right? Who was already obviously through that showing that they'd be excellent at working for this Bieber brand. And so they got the job. I'm going to guess whoever this person is probably squealed to no delight. You're going to be hanging out with Bieber every day and managing social. But I think you can look to see what people
have done. And if they haven't done something, you're probably going to need to get a little bit more trust with them. So maybe samples.
Yeah, but they have their own personal opinion. Great, but when they speak on behalf of the brand, personal opinion is necessary.
Yeah, I think you need to find people who hold the same opinions as your brand in the first place. So if they're not passionate about your brand in the way that you want them to be passionate about, probably not the right people, especially for community managers. Like if I was trying to hire a community manager, and I do this all the time, the first thing I'm looking for is their passion for something. They're not interested. Like there were a lot of really great candidates that I didn't hire at Yelp. They weren't great because they didn't care. And because they didn't care, I knew that they were never going to get what the brand was trying to do. So they'd never be able to talk like the brand in the first place. So unfortunately, they weren't solid candidates for that. I'm sure they've gone on to find like things that they were more passionate about. And I think with community management, you can't fake it for that long. If you don't love it, you're not going to be able to do it day in, day out when you're like tired and have a lot of other priorities going on. So yeah, I would look for people who love it already and who speak about it the way that you want them to speak about it already. You can tweak some things. I'd rather have somebody who doesn't know how to use Twitter, talks about the brand really great, or talks about whatever subject matter really great, than somebody who knows how to use like Twitter and how to really execute on hashtags, but isn't really passionate about the brand that I'm representing. Any other questions about letting it go? Yeah.
And for everyone on the, they have a, right? So rather than just letting it go all out in public, we trying to set an empowerment. And when we feel empowered, when they feel that is the good. And of course, we also have patients that they would have, be aligned with the
And I mean, just like hiring anybody, sometimes the ones that you thought were going to be like the greatest ones ever, they might let you down a little bit. It happens. Kind of have to like be a bit flexible on that and just monitor well. Cool. All right, facepalm time. I gotta say, my absolute favorite way of looking for pictures, I just totally just go onto Google. I know this is really simple, but I'm just like image search, and I just like enjoy every moment of whatever I've just typed in. I come up with these. Yeah. There were a lot of great face palms, actually. Anyway, check it out. You'll find them. Okay. I just want to kind of like leave it up. All right. Another great one. I want to know it too. I didn't have time to research it. If anyone wants to research that, let me know. That'd be rad. Okay. So generally when I pull up something about trolls, I end up talking about a troll that happened, like an internet troll that happened like earlier in my career. I'd been a community manager at Yelp for like a month or something, maybe 3 weeks. And when you're a new community manager, it's like a new job anywhere. You're totally worried that I'm like wanting to do the best job possible because I really cared about it. So I was worried when anything like negative would happen. I didn't have a really thick skin yet. But I grew it real fast. So I usually tell this story about this blogger who was on Yelp, and I was trying to have these conversations with them because that's what you do as a community manager, right? I've said that. You just keep having these great conversations. And this blogger was like posting really great reviews, and I was like, yeah, you can like totally keep writing reviews. Like, we love having you here. Meanwhile, I didn't know this part. Back at Yelp HQ, they were actually shutting down this blogger's account because this blogger was doing some things that weren't so savory, whatever. And I didn't know because I was the new community manager, and this actually showed a little bit of a problem in Yelp's communication strategy at that time internally. They hadn't told me. So that got cleaned up through all this kind of mess. I usually tell the story about this and how this blogger continues to wreak havoc on me because this person sees me out and I don't know who this person is and what they look like, but they see me and then they tweet at me how I ignored them and they still do this. I'm like, what's wrong with people? And I get all worked up about it. Because trolls get under your skin. I don't know. What are you supposed to do? Some people are just negative. I have a news story to share now because I have something that just happened this week. that shows that I continue to let trolls get under my skin, but at least I recognize my flaws and I'm able to like course correct faster, and I'm able to help other people course correct faster on them. So a couple weeks ago, last week, one of the accounts that I work on, they send me this like, a screenshot of a Facebook message that's been happening. It's basically like, it says on this campaign, your campaign's not engaging enough. Your campaign isn't fun enough. You're not doing enough stuff like contests and like participation. Your story isn't one constant thread. This is what this message said. So I get this, and then I see underneath that like they've responded, like, and I'm like, oh, you responded way too fast. You should definitely wait, like the 24-hour grace period or whatever, just to like let it sink in and like come up with something. So you responded with like something that was supposed to say we are growing it organically, and you responded with we're organically. Now I'm getting all worked up about it. So I come up with like, yes, this is true. We need to do a better job at like participation. We're community managers. We can do this way better. So I come up with like this whole thing, I write this entire email, and I send it back to the team. As soon as I hit send, I was like, I can't believe I just did that. This person that wrote the message in the first place is totally just trying to steal our jobs. So nobody talks like that. This is another social media person who's out there being like, I can do a better job than this. And they're trying to steal like what we've already been growing organically, as it turns out. And sure enough, the next messages on the thread were something like, I've grown this like 20,000 in the time that you've grown to like 300. I can do this better than you. If you want my help, you're gonna have to pay me. I let them get under my skin again. So, anybody out there have any recommendations for me? Who's dealt with trolls before? Yeah. Oh, everybody, yay, good. Okay, please.
I would ignore.
Should have. You're right.
Yeah, I don't agree with totally ignoring them. But, if they make a point or discussion, just make a short comment saying, good point. And that's it.
Yeah,
And
great
basically
feedback. Yeah.
Yeah.
I should say this has led to us like doing an audit on ourselves to see how we can improve, because I think even in that I'm like, oh yeah, we can totally do stuff better because everyone can do stuff better. Yeah.
Some of my best experience with dealing with trolls is to completely ignore them and let my community instead do the response, because I will only escalate that just because of who I am. And so sometimes I've prodded some of my stars to say, like, maybe you just want to take a peek at this and like say something, but to keep yourself out of it can often work really well if you've got an engaged community already.
Mm-hmm. Which harkens back to having like that great foundation of core contributors, even when you have a really, really small. Todd?
I used to have the, I started framing some actual colleagues into a trouble that. And some people, you start answering something not having a physical process. Stop.
Intellectual domination.
Please elaborate.
Demonstrating yourself as smart. You can hold on. Make them
I'm nervous about that.
I'm nervous.
Yeah.
I'm nervous, especially online. I think to me that's something that would be great. And I had this a lot, diffusing situations in person. Used to have like these battles back and forth with like business owners who were upset about like reviews they'd received, and I could go into that, but offline, please. I don't want to talk about that stuff right now. We're talking about this. I would just go into people's businesses and be like, "Hi, I'm that girl that you're screaming about. Like I'd like to have an intellectual conversation with you about these things because it's getting convoluted online. So let's just talk it out."
Maybe it's more so like, like it's happening online that it's really, really strong. They've internalized something
Sometimes I think that community managers should all have not just psychology degrees, but counseling degrees, like probably masters in counseling.
I have to say, hey, I need it.
Right? Yes. Totally. Yeah.
I just have a question, just going back to your last item of letting go. Does every item need to be answered? Does it
No.
make sense sometimes? to just
Sometimes
let
it
let
totally
go?
makes sense to ignore it. Sometimes. I think you have to make, this is the tough thing, right? You're making judgment calls every time. So I could say about this particular one is obviously now when I look back, I'm like, oh, I was kind of feeling like we weren't doing enough. And I was, because I knew that we weren't doing, actually we hadn't been deploying any offline strategies. And that was getting my back all up that we weren't doing that as an organization, because I'm like, this is an important piece of it. Why aren't we doing it? So when something like that got called out, I'm like, right, it's not that participatory. We need to do better. So yeah, thank you for all of that. Definitely add that to the, whoever wants to talk more about that. I think that could be quite cathartic. Okay, next facepalm. I only have one after this, and then I'm totally done. So, has anyone seen Conversations with My 2-year-old? So awesome. Go Google that afterwards. They're hilarious. It's actual conversations with a 2-year-old reenacted by a grown man. It's kind of creepy and funny all at the same time. Anyway, Vanity Staff. I am so guilty of this sometimes when I'm feeling insecure about a community that I'm trying to like grow or build or whatever. I can get really like into looking at like the likes because it's so easy to look at, right? Or like looking at like this one easy metric, like, oh, I collected like 100 emails from this thing, but then nobody actually did anything, so that's kind of a wash. But look, I collected 100 emails, and it's I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but I feel like sometimes you need something to glom onto, and so sometimes you glom onto the wrong thing. So I like to deploy for myself, looking at one metric that matters, the real conversations I've had in any given day. This might not be that like scalable, but I feel like if I've done a good job, like I've answered the emails that deserve to be answered today, I've had conversations with people that I should have had conversations with, I got to talk to all of you in some way, and hopefully even more throughout like the next like 6 months. Those are the things that make me stop thinking about how many people like something or how many people followed me. I put this one on here because I saw myself as I was putting this presentation together. Someone was telling me about a media tour that they were on recently, and I was sitting there listening to them tell the story about how annoyed that they were about these two Twitterati's talking about who was better because one had like 50 more followers than the other. I just was like, does it matter, people? Like, at the end of the day, does that actually matter? It shouldn't matter. And if we spend all of our time thinking about this, you end up like me, thinking like, okay, if I could just get one more like on this, then I'm solid for the day. Or if I keep looking at Facebook, you know, when you pull up your admin page and there's like, you know, you can get to this next whatever benchmark if you just like boosted your post by doing this or whatever. And I'm like, you know what I could do actually? I could just go out, I could turn the computer off, I could go out and have another great conversation. I did this last week. Again, I was pulling my presentation together like on Friday. Sorry, I probably shouldn't have said that, but I was redoing my presentation again on Friday, and I was busy looking at some metrical stuff, and I was doing my field day Friday thing, and so I was at someone else's office, and they were having a great conversation. They were drinking beer, and I was still like trying to blog this thing and do this other thing, and wearing one too many hats at the end of the day, just trying to tie up some loose ends. And I heard them say something that made me realize it didn't matter what was happening on my computer at that time. It mattered that I was over there having a conversation with them. And that conversation led to amazing things. There was like 4 of them. So I could have just said, oh, there's just 4 of them, whatever, and I'll just be over here, Sarah. I just ended up having this like amazing conversation that linked to how many people we all knew and how many projects that we could actually do together if we just joined forces on a couple of things. I would never have gotten there if I had kept looking at like just one more way of contesting, one more way of like tweaking the tweet. So more real conversation. Any thoughts about vanity stats? Do people just love looking at their followers, or is that just I know.
Kill them all.
It's really hard not to, right? We just need to like replace that with something a little bit more meaningful. Yeah. That's a very good question.
It should be an event. You should do
I
it
know,
someday.
I have it up there. Metrics that actually matter. Maybe somebody at Hootsie will help us. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. How do I actually measure quality? Okay, this is probably totally the wrong way, and it probably isn't scalable, but it's something that just seems to help me. I measure it in stories. So I actually look to see, not like stories like trending hashtag stories, although that's kind of helpful. I actually measure, like, maybe it's more like a long-term relationship with somebody who's important. So you might not be able to track every single person, but you can track some. Like, I could say, like, Dave back there, well, let's see, I met you because we were doing something with Chimp and you were in one of the bocce things. And then it turned out that you were also something with field hockey, so there was a little bit more of a connection there. And then I was at Hootsuite that day, and then we were at the bocce tournament, and now we are here. And somewhere along the line, we became friends on Facebook. We followed each other on Twitter, and I feel like at some point we're going to end up having coffee together. Like, I just see it happening. Can I keep measuring that, like, through our entire, like, relationship? Like, will that develop into other things? Because I see this a lot at Chimp. Something will happen. Actually, Chad is a good example of this. So Chad helps Eli with Net Tuesdays, or Net Vancouver. It'll be okay. I know. We had, Chad is, I don't know exactly what he does at a charity, but it had to do with what we do at Chimp. So Chad was, I guess, introduced to Chimp by somebody else in our office, but we didn't track that, we didn't measure that, right? It's just like another introduction, right? There's been lots of them. And then I spoke at a Hootsuite thing, and Chad was there. And then Chad came to, I'd met Chad online as well through another Net Vancouver event, or in person at another Net Vancouver event. And then Chad came to this salon that Stevie had organized the next day. And we ended up talking about charity, and he's like, yeah, I'm totally going to sign up to do this thing with the charity widget. And he did it, and the following day he did it. And my office mate at Chimp was like, whoa, that guy Chad actually did it. And I was like, yeah, I know, I talked to him yesterday. He's like, no. We talked to him like 5 months ago about this. I'm like, let's measure all of the moments that we've had an engagement with this person, just to see like how long some things take. Yeah. They're not? Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm sure there's another.
There's like a sub-level of LinkedIn that none of us know
It's
about.
like
Is that where that 5% goes? Yeah, and they're the ones that are the hardest to track, because you actually have to look at that one relationship and try and figure out like where it all started. So I look at people who become like really powerful connectors in my life, and people who have become like really important people in my life, and I do go back and like track them back. I've done it with Todd, did it with Jenna, done it with Eli. Like you start to realize that sometimes it's the very few connections, like those really deep, meaningful connections that you have, that actually have the most bang for their buck. Sorry to like make it sound like we're transactional, but like they do. And actually, Jenna, the only reason that you know Danny is because Todd introduced me to him.
Oh, thank you very much.
There you go. Okay, moving on to my last one here before we do this. Okay, so I love cats. I needed a cat slide. I'm so sorry. It's so amazing. Okay, so I started thinking about like all the times where I feel like I've turned people off, and how many times I've like left a dinner party or something and been like, too fast, too soon, I talked about too much, they don't care yet. And I think back to that, like, especially in my like desperate moments, like the first year at Yelp, for example. People were like, what's that? Like, everyone in this room at first year at Yelp would have been like, what are you talking about? And most people would have tuned me out. No one would be listening to me. And I really wanted people to know and to care and to love it because I loved it. But I came on too strong. I did it too fast. And then people didn't love it. And they became late adopters. Or maybe they were just supposed to be late adopters. That's okay too. But getting okay with the fact that not everyone is going to like you as a person, like what your community is doing, like your brand, just being the coolest cat about it. Because you know in high school, right? Like girls, maybe some guys in the room, I don't know. The guy who's like off in the corner, kind of like really too cool for school. And everyone wants to be that guy's friend or that girl's friend because they're like so mysterious and so interesting and so aloof. I feel like we need to do that a little bit more in our communities. We need to like intrigue people by bringing them in just a little taste, right? Just a little bit, because they're not going to be able to handle everything about a certain brand or what we stand for as an individual. You can't tell everybody our like sad, like lost my puppy dog story. Sorry if anyone did lose their puppy dog when you were little. You can't just break into that like right at the beginning. You need to like tease people in a little bit so they want to get to know more. And it's a skill to learn how to do that and to hold back when you just want to share like so much. Like it's been really hard, like even up here, to not just keep talking about stuff, like to go deeper and deeper, because I know the deeper that you go, the harder it is to keep eyeballs like focused and to get people to be like, okay, I could take a little bit more of this. It's not that hard. I might want to be a community manager one day. I think I can. So learning to be a little bit more cool is my last face palm of the evening. And then I love the oatmeal. So, flesh versus flush. So we just kind of like touched on the tip of the iceberg tonight. I shared a lot of like different things. Some of the stuff may have made sense. Some of it may not have, because sometimes I feel like I talk about things like everybody's on like the same level, and sometimes we're not, because we come from so many different places. And that's why Eli and I thought that it would be awesome to do all these salons and to get people to come to those in between the bigger ones that we're doing in this room.
Stevie style.
Stevie style, yeah, thanks for the idea. So I put this up here. I'm hoping people will come up over the next like half hour or so, chat with me, whatever, and like maybe just put a check or your name or your Twitter handle. Actually, that's what we're going to do. Put your Twitter handle on the ones that you want to do so that I know who to reach out to about when we're doing it, and we can coordinate times that work best for us. Sound like a plan? Cool. Oh, that's all of them again. Do you want me to leave this up, or would you rather me leave up my contact information? Contact. Here you go.
Sweet.
Thanks, you guys.
So this is not a once-in-a-lifetime experience, but still, this is a good moment. This is the moment when you have Crystal trapped right here in front of her room. So if you don't ask a question right now, you're going to have to compete with everyone else afterwards in a big crowd, and it's going to be difficult. So this is your moment to get a question. Stevie, take it.
All right. So what would you say are like 3 things to make an offline event?
Oh, good question. Okay. Don't spend as much time planning it as you do promoting it. If you're still planning it all the way up to the moment where you're supposed to be hosting it, you miss that big window where you're supposed to be promoting it. Promote more, plan less. That'd be 1. Oh, okay, 2, because we're in Vancouver. Don't stress when everyone is last minute. All of you. Actually, most of you were already on this like a while ago, so I'm really impressed that people had like signed up to it like a while ago. But from all the events that I've planned, like especially through the Yelp years, people do it last minute. You know, people are asking like, as the event is like halfway done, can we still get tickets? Like, it's just what people do. So don't be desperate about like attendance. Do more. And 3, do it again. Don't ever make events be like the one thing that you do, like one time only, and then you never do it again. You get so much better every time you do it, And more people come, and they respond earlier. And all the things that sucked the first time get way better the second and third and fourth and fifth time. And we've got a couple of really awesome event planners, like up in the front row here too, that you can bug as well, because they know what I'm saying.
Sparkle.
Yes. They didn't even come together. I just introduced them and told them to sit next to each other because they needed to meet. Okay, those are my three. So, yeah. Shy, how do you reach a user group that's very shy and private, but a large group, a large amount of them?
I have a comment.
Yeah.
They might not be as shy as you think they are. Because I remember in the early days of Yelp, because I was there from the early days, when there was like 12 people at an event, and it did feel kind of shy and awkward and weird. But it got so much better when people opened up. And I think sometimes the assumption is people are shy, but it only takes a few times for them to get together before they open up. So maybe they're not so shy after all.
Yeah. People are also, I think people are like creatures of habit. And if we show them the kind of culture that we're trying to create, and we have them as part of the culture that actually creates it, they actually come out of their shell because they're in a comfortable kind of situation. So my suggestion would be like isolate maybe like 30 people of this really large group that you think there might be potential to like do something offline, for example, and then be happy when 4 of them come. And just start there. Yeah. Yeah.
And so how do you have to look for Facebook vote for one?
That's a very good question. Now, is your community, are they super diverse, or are they like, they're like the two sides of the marketplace, right? Okay. So two-sided marketplace, is that a term?
Yes.
Is it? Okay. I'm like, sorry, but is it? Someone Wikipedia it right now for me. Okay. So I feel like I'll just share my own personal experience on this because I've dealt with 2 pretty like hardcore. So one being Chimp and one being Yelp. Yelp was business owners and consumers, and Chimp is charities and donors. I think the thing is every time I tweet or every time I write anything online, I think how whatever I'm writing could be an example for each side to get to know the other side better. Because obviously you're trying to create connections between the two, because I know yours, so it's transactional. You're trying to get people to come together and like have some kind of transaction in the center of it. So like I remember, I guess the strongest thing I could say is like, so on Yelp, our talk threads. Talk threads, we used to think that all of the people that were actually writing on them were actually the consumers. But business owners would see that all the time. And so they became like case studies for how business owners could improve or like keep doing the same thing or whatever. So we would use our communication to like highlight by like, you know, showing by example like, oh, this like review today was really awesome because it talked about this, this, and this, which also helped a business see that Yelp was a good thing for their business because we were highlighting things that consumers were saying. At Chimp, we talk a lot about donors and charities mixed together, but instead of, we talk about examples in the middle that blend both of them. So like our tweets tend to be, well, it's me, so my tweets tend to be a lot like, look at this cool thing that this donor did or this group did to help this charity. And then in the next breath, it's like, look at what this charity did to help be impactful and how they're like using, or how they're using like donors' money wisely or whatever. So I think just showing, educating on both sides is the way that I've found to like blend them both together. And then they end it, actually, and then if you can, bring them together. It was really awesome at Yelp when we bring business owners out to the events. We'd be like, yeah, you should be here, you should talk, like you're part of this community too. Yeah, and then it never felt like it was 2 different distinct groups. Anybody else have something to, yeah?
We have some
B2B? What would you, can you give me something specific that you'd like to know about?
it's just because if your company is like a business to business, that is probably harder to actually event or talk to the actual person because you're gonna follow the company's account, right? And how do you kind of build this relationship of all those people? Because it's solid.
So, but are you starting this relationship like on social media somewhere?
Planning to start with media.
Okay, so well, I mean, if you've got, I would say like whoever happens to be managing their Twitter is like the first place to start. There's often times where like at Chimp, I feel like we're a B2B because we're talking to charities and trying to get them to like use some of the tools that we have available to them. So I end up just like DMing somebody on Twitter and saying, hey, I don't know if you're the right person to ask this, but this. It's really, I mean, sometimes I think what I love about DMing is that it's like, it has to be the most straightforward question ever because you have such a small place to put it. And so you don't have any choice but to be basically blunt with a happy face at the end of it. I don't know if that helps. So I would say, I would say if you're trying to talk to like 1,000 people, you're still going to need to start with like one. So just find one and make that the first little opening. Sure.
Okay. You had this great concept that you talked about before at a previous event, and it was dealing with numbers, and it was 99 1.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, of course.
Good place
You
to
want
share.
me to share? Okay, sure. So I think it's actually an internet phenomenon, which is in percentages. So 1,990 is the way that I like to say it, because then I can count upwards, and the 1 is the most important of all of it. So 1 is represents the actual active contributors that you have on any given site. So yeah.
It's the Pareto principle.
Oh, it has a
It's
name.
mathematician.
Ooh. Okay. Can you expand a little bit more on that for me?
Well, his name's Pareto.
Okay.
But it holds I think the people that do the content marketing blog, what's her name? She's from Pittsburgh. They wrote a book, Ben McConnell and her. I mean,
I'm looking at Sarah now.
Remarkable.
I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah, and they wrote a book and they incorporated the Pareto principle and they studied all these communities online
Okay.
on content marketing, and they traced it back to this mathematician named Pareto in Italy, and it holds for a lot of things. It's like the Fibonacci series, but that's Fibonacci.
Cool.
This is Pareto. It's
Okay.
1,990 or
Okay. Thank you. So on the way that I've interpreted it is 1% are like your core contributors. Those are like the people that you can actually like see, feel, probably talk to in most communities. 9% is the like commenters, so the people who are more passively engaging. There might be commenting on a blog post, but they're not actually writing the original content. They might be even like, depending on how you define contributing, they might be people who are liking posts but not doing anything else. They might be people who are retweeting your information. And then the 90 is the percentage of all of us who just absorb and lurk, and yeah, we're the audience. So and we were just talking about this earlier about like Wikipedia, because I think that's a good one that we all know and probably use. How many people in this room use Wikipedia? How many people contribute on Wikipedia? Oh, look, that's probably about 1%. Ta-da! It works! Thank you for contributing to Wikipedia. Cool. Yeah.
Do you find that just on the 1,990 that different people contribute differently? Like, for example, on your own brand's website, comments and emails are contributing more, let's say, than on a blog post? Or?
It might be. I think you just have to define what you're considering your own, what metrics you're using to define contributor, right? So like when it was Yelp, 1% were people who are actively contributing reviews. So they weren't just talking about how they like use the site. They were seriously just contributors. So we just honed in on that because that was one part of the community that we could affect, and we knew that they were contributing everything. So if we grew that, like as the viewers grew, then our contributor numbers grew too. 9 were the ones who like thought it was funny, useful, or cool, and oh, awesome, thanks. And then 90 were the lurkers, the audience. But the audience is also sometimes, or obviously the audience is also contributing. Yeah.
So isn't the purpose of community management about turning the 90% into events? And so would that not be irrelevant?
Yeah. I think one of the things I like to look at it like a funnel. Like, so you have like, this 100%, so you have 100 people, right? And this 100 people has the possibility of all being contributors, and then probably the audience is like 1,000, right? Is it my math right on that? I could look at you because you said you know math. Okay, I was trying to do percentages. Don't worry, I'm probably wrong on it. But anyway, so you look at it on a funnel, and what we would look at is one person. Let's just call it this room, and let's say there's 100 people in this room. One person in this room probably end up being a contributor. Yes, we want everyone to be, but you also recognize that not everybody will be. So you start looking for like the sparkles in people to like help motivate and encourage them to get into that. So strategy at Yelp would have been like finding out that you just happen to be on Yelp and I'm the community manager, but you've never written anything. I'd totally encourage you to write something. But if you weren't, then I wouldn't base my whole strategy on trying to get you and like people like you to contribute. I would base it more on getting people who are like my 1% to contribute. Yes, it's in that 90% of people, but if I focus my love and attention and growth on that 1% and get them to reach out and them to talk to their networks, it's probably more likelihood that they're going to be able to find more of these kind of contributors than the community manager.
So we've got time for one last question there in the back, and then we'll move into the next phase.
I have a question about moving your community to market. For example, Yelp was well established in the States, in Canada, they hired someone. But what was the strategy that you felt were most effective? Or how do you, now looking back, when you opened up the market, what are the lessons you share?
Sure. So I think it might be a little bit different if you're coming from a place where you're trying to move like the same community into a new market. We were trying to form a whole new community. So for us, it really was like, what will make sense to people in Vancouver? And one of the biggest learnings that I had was they had all these really great ways of doing it in San Francisco and New York and Chicago, but Vancouver is not San Francisco, New York, and Chicago. So for the first little while, I tried to do it like San Francisco, New York, and Chicago because it worked so well there. And then I realized it's Vancouver, and we have to do it like Vancouver. And I should know this because they hired me because I'm a Vancouverite, and I should know how to do this. But I was so blown away by how awesome it was in Chicago. I should do everything where everyone's getting manis and petties. No, that doesn't work here. I think the biggest thing was like recognizing who you're trying to target and trying to find ways to like target them in the way that they would want to be targeted. So like the reason that I wanted to do the Make It show, not because I was friends with Jenna, but because the people, the demographic at Make It, I'm like, that's kind of like the Vancouverite. That's kind of like the people. And one of the things we used to say were, and they said this about me and every community manager that I hired, I said the same thing. I'm like, so you're basically going to be recruiting people who are like you. So who do you want to spend your time with? If this is a friend machine, you're actually going to make friends out of this process. I didn't really realize that at the beginning. I wish I knew that at the beginning. I would have done a better job of just thinking who I want to be friends with. But you're basically like the curator of cool in some way, right? So what do you think is cool? And, I wasn't into sports. So the beginning people at Yelp, they weren't sporty people. They were like crafty and cocktailing, and they liked cooking because that's what I liked doing. So we started getting good at like fleshing out a community around you of people you wanted to be around, which is also why it's really important to hire community managers who like what they're doing because they'll bring more people who like what they're doing. So, and in every city that we grew after that, I got to learn that even better. So like, it's the community, the people in the community, they all have kind of similar traits around wanting to share their opinions. The things that they like doing are very different. So like from here to Toronto, I remember one of the first events I had to like help plan in Toronto, and they're like, yeah, there'll be cocktails. I'm like, ooh, awesome. There'll be like, like rosemary that's been like swatted with my hand and put into the into the dish or whatever. No, it was like a thing of iced tea and vodka. That's that. At the time, that was a cocktail in Toronto, and those Yelpers ate it up, loved it, and I was like, well, what is that? What are we like 19? Anyway, so you have to bring people if they're advocates, like they're not paid, or if they are community managers that you are paying. Finding the people that you want more people to be like. So I used to say like, you probably know someone who's like this because you're friends with this person. Let's bring them to the party. Well, in that case, San Francisco and Vancouver are kind of similar in culture. One of the biggest things was just the scale. So they were doing different things in San Francisco because they had so many more years into it. So the scale of what they had to do for their operations was different than like just trying to get like more than 5 people to come out to one thing just to prove the concept. So another thing would have been in San Francisco, people do, like San Francisco has like huge wait lists, right, for like reservations for restaurants. We barely have that, right? There's only a few handful of places in Vancouver where that's actually true. So looking for how to do things last minute versus like super planned because you know everyone that's going to be there and what they're going to like to do becomes really different when you're trying to get partnerships too, right? Because you're not really sure who all is going to be there. So we had to develop slightly different ways of messaging that. We have another thing that we're supposed to be doing. So
We do indeed. So thank you once more, ladies and gentlemen. Crystal's the best.